Hi guys, welcome to our last lecture, Abnormal Psychology. In this lecture, we're going to look at kind of just the other disorders, the ones that don't really fall into depression or schizophrenia or anxiety. So kind of this like hodgepodge of other disorders associated with, right, oddities in thinking and behavior. Okay. First of all, we're going to look at, let me see, this here, there we go, somatoform and related disorders. I just typed a bunch on these slides, so I apologize. Don't apologize. I'll add those little texty things. All right, so the first one we're going to talk about is somatoform. So if you remember from biology, and then when we talked about neurons, soma means body, right? And so like the soma of the cell is like the body part of the cell. Right, so when we're looking at the neurons, this is the soma, dendrites, right, axon here. So the soma means body, right? So soma means body, and then form disorder. So things that are relating to the body. So there's a psychological cause, and then it manifests itself in the body somehow. There's a couple different types, right? So these right here are types of somatoform disorders, all right? So symptoms that take a bodily form without any physical cause, right? So it's thought that there's something going on in the brain that's kind of manifesting itself in the body. So this could include symptoms like vomiting, dizzy, blurred, anything where it's like you're sick, but there doesn't seem to be any reason why you are dizzy or why you're getting sick, right? Or your vision is blurry. And so some of these things actually kind of I spelled dreadful wrong down here, are thought to have had like there we go. A root in anxiety. We'll talk about that in a second. But the interesting thing I was reading in the book was about cultural influence. So it was talking about how in particularly like Eastern civilizations, Eastern cultures, right? So Asian civilization, there is less of a social acceptable response to, it's less socially acceptable to talk about being depressed or anxious or those other type of mental disorders we've learned about, but it's perfectly okay to talk about having physical ailments, right? So very much focused on the body and not so much the mind. So we see higher incidence of somatoform disorders in Eastern civilizations and Western civilizations, and it's thought that that's why, that because they're not able to express anxiety or depression, that the kind of like body takes it in. Now we've all kind of had sometimes, we probably have had experiences with some type of somatoform disorder, especially under times of high stress, right? So when you're stressed out, you might feel sick to your stomach, right? You might feel dizzy, right? You might feel like laying down. So sometimes because of the psychological stresses in our life, we feel these type of somatoform, but these are like repeated, right? So this is a related disorder, right? We're talking about over long periods of time, repeated instances of feeling sick or having these physical ailments without any type of like seen causes. All right, so conversion disorder type of somatoform is believed that when anxiety somehow is converted into physical symptoms that do not make neurological sense, right? So people completely losing their vision and maybe completely going numb, right? So loss of sensation, like to the point where like losing like a sensation or feeling in your arm, and people able to be like stuck with needles, right? Or like done something like even burning or fire brought close to, and there's no feeling, right? So, but there's nothing wrong with the brain at the time, but people completely lose sensation and it doesn't make neurological sense. So that's the conversion disorder. Very kind of Freudian type thinking that there's some type of one thing, something's being converted into another. So it's like repressed feelings or something on anxiety in the brain is being like converted into something like as an outlet. Okay. Another type of somatoform disorder is illness anxiety disorder, which is formerly known as hypochondriac. So someone who's known as a hypochondriac is now called the illness anxiety disorder. And the illness anxiety disorders when people who take normal symptoms like feeling sick or having a headache or having like a cough, and then always anxious that it's some dreadful disease, right? Convinced that there's something wrong with them. They continually go to doctor after doctor, convinced that there's something else that's going on and that it's not just like a normal cold or cough or feeling. Okay, so those are our two different types of somatoform disorders. The other type of kind of other disorders we're going to talk about is dissociative disorder. So dissociative disorder, I don't know why this picture, your book chose this picture. Dissociative disorder is kind of the most famous one we're talking about is like multiple personalities, the DID, dissociative identity disorder. But dissociative disorders are marked by repeated loss in memory, changes in identity. Doesn't necessarily have to be multiple personalities we'll talk about in a second. It can be people, it's what's considered in a fugue state. The example that I was reading about was a gentleman that was was present during the 9/11 attacks in New York City, was found, went missing, was found 6 months later in Cuba and had no recollection of his past life. So almost type of like an amnesia type syndrome, but more with post-traumatic stress or dealing with like really, I want to say like stressful situations that cause psychological harm, right? So a fugue state is like separating from the painful memory and creating this new identity. And so remember that to disassociate means to become separate from consciousness. So again, going back to like how this could be like a normal thing, like people have reported having these kind of like I separated from reality, or like I could like see myself like as if I was not in my body, right? So kind of separating from your mind from your body. But when we're looking at dissociative disorders, we're talking about this happening like and actually, hold on just a second. I have the lights off so people don't think there's someone in the room. Sorry, what was I talking about? Oh, this has happened, or like people report this happening, but when we're talking about disorder, it's like marked, remember, huge impact on your life, right? Okay, so most famous, or probably like most, I want to say like common type you think about with the dissociative disorder is multiple personalities, which is called the Dissociative Identity Disorder, or acronym DID, right? Make sure we know those acronyms along with what they stand for. So formerly called multiple personality disorder, where people have a marked disassociate from one personality and no memory of that other personality while they are in their new personality, right? There's been a couple, so there's some controversy around this I'll talk about in the next slide. But there are some very, what I'm going to say, like telling stories or just kind of normal stories about people that have dissociative identity disorder. One of this is just a book called The Three Faces of Eve, which is this woman here. And in this case, she's talking about, most of the time we think about multiple personalities, like very extreme, different, like violent here. We'll talk about the hillside strangler in a second. Like completely two different people, where one's violent and one's, mean and one's nice. And The Three Faces of Eve, this is a woman that kind of accounts her recollection and her work with a therapist about these different personalities. And there wasn't necessarily something that was, so they went by different names, had different voices and mannerisms, but very, I want to say like normal personalities, right? Just very different and distinct. There wasn't anything angry or violent about them. However, the hillside strangler is the opposite of that. Was a gentleman you can read about in your book, who was arrested and then tried to use multiple personalities as a escape for his sentence, or to blame it on this like different personality, this like violent, angry personality that came out that he had no memory of, right? Again, this is very different, talking about like kind of like normal different personalities. Like some of us have like super goofy personalities when we're around like one set of friends. They're very serious or different. That like we're not talking about like people that just have different personalities with different groups throughout the day. You're talking about distinct dissociative, no memory of the other person, very different mannerisms, voice, things like that. Okay, so understanding, again, we talked about the controversy around dissociative disorder, a lot of just wondering if it's genuine or not. So one of those I want to say like points against it are the occurrences of DID rates. So like the United States has occurrences of these, or like reported diagnoses of this. Japan has 0, right? So usually when we look at disorders like with, we talked about schizophrenia and depression, we're looking at worldwide, we see these disorders. When we do not see them in all different cultures, right, that leaves under some speculation whether or not true neurological disorder, like biological causes, right? There's some controversy around whether or not the therapist creates them, right? So that it's type of like hypnosis, because most of the time these personalities come out during hypnosis. And looking at dissociative disorder under like different psychological perspectives is one of the ways that we kind of find different, what I want to say, like explanations of them. So it might not be multiple personality disorders. It might be like an anxiety disorder. So if I'm looking at it from a biological point of view, an anxiety disorder that trying to escape past memories is more for like shutting down that part of the brain, and so that doesn't bring about those biological reactions. Looking at memories, right? So again, biology, right? So part of the hippocampus completely being blocked off to kind of protect the brain. And then the big controversy about it is that it's only noticed by certain therapists in certain settings, all right? But again, so going back to like the 3 faces of Eve, very kind of like normal person with all these 3 different things, versus the strangler, who actually later was convicted of all of those murders. He was a very smart man, found that he was actually researching multiple personality disorder and was able to like trick people into thinking that he had these different personalities. Okay. All right. Next one is other personality disorders, right? Sorry, let me go down here. All right. So personality disorders. Here we go. These are actually put into different clusters. So when you think about, again, like personalities, multiple personalities, like very distinct loss of memory throughout, these disorders are characterized by certain types of personalities that are enduring, which means, right, they are long lasting, they don't fluctuate, and inflexible, right? So we're not just talking about certain times of the, of your life, or certain times of the day, or where it's changing. Sorry, there's a lot going on outside. I'm not paying attention to you guys. Okay, so the 3 different clusters of the personality disorders. The first one is anxiety, eccentric, and then dramatic impulsive. So all of these types of personality disorders, you kind of are thrown under the umbrella of like personality disorders. One of them that associated with anxiety is the avoidant personality disorder. This is marked by a distinct, like high anxiety where they're not able to leave the house. They do not like to go in public, do not like to, like, they will avoid at all cost meeting new people, talking with people, and just being out in public. So that's considered under the anxiety cluster. Literally, I was looking in your book and online. I don't know why it's called the anxiety cluster, because there's just that one listed. But there you go. Okay. The eccentric cluster, also known as schizoid personality disorder, so not schizophrenia, but a schizoid personality disorder, is marked by very interesting personalities, could even be like loss of emotions, very like odd mannerisms and way they talk to people. But again, it has to, so again, like, how do we define like being weird or odd from like actually having this personality disorder? Remember that we're going back to these things that are impair social functionings, right? So somehow have an impact on their life and being able to function in society. This last cluster here is the dramatic impulsive. These are ones like narcissistic personality disorder, only thinking about themselves and their importance and how to like make good things happen to them, an inability to see from another point of view. Again, that gets in the way of them being able to function in a group. And histrionic oh my gosh, hold on a second. God, remind me never to record on Fridays. Histrionic personality is an attention-seeking disorder, constantly kind of bringing attention to themselves, seeking approval. This could be kind of under the umbrella of like being seductive, always looking for outside attention and approval, and doing very things, again, that are socially impairing them socially to functioning. Okay, I'm very distracted here. Okay, last one here, antisocial personality disorder. So I know you can think of like the way that we use antisocial as talking about someone that doesn't like to be around people. The way antisocial is used for this disorder is meaning like literally like anti-society. Feeling, so when I say like, they were talking about like serial killers, sociopaths, psychopaths, that do not believe that society, like they believe they're above society, make their own laws, make their own rules, do not like people in general. These are typically males. The symptoms display before the age of 15, usually as having zero remorse for their behaviors, inflicting harm on animals, showing little fear over things that are presented, and just very impulsive, didn't think about it, I'm going to do this because I want to, type of disorder. Some of the famous serial killers that have been arrested for this and diagnosed with antisocial personality disorder have thought just that they're doing society a favor, right? Because this person didn't, was making the world a bad place, or that they deserved it, or that they had the right to because they were out by themselves, right? So interesting note your book talked about is that antisocial personality disorder is a diagnosable disorder, just like everything else, but because of the negative connotation behind it, doesn't get the same like thought that there should be treatment for it. If that makes sense. Some different ways to understand why antisocial personality disorder. So, right, biopsychosocial. So looking at the biological view, and this is me putting your graphs in from the book again. So really interesting studies done with, again, genetic twins, looking at people that were diagnosed with antisocial disorder, looking at the how commonly it happens in their family, and then the genetic twin studies show that when we have identical twins where one is diagnosed, that the other is much more likely to be diagnosed. Some interesting things, and you guys, it's right, so where's the adrenaline? The one right here, I'll make that a little bit bigger. Looking at the amount of adrenaline that is secreted under, here. Oh my gosh, wait, hold on. Here, couldn't even read it. There you go. So this is from your book, but it's looking at adrenaline secretion under very stressful situations. So levels of arousal at as 13-year-olds. So the blue here is looking at people who later did not have criminal convictions, and then the red here is looking at people that later did. So basically what it's showing is that people that were later convicted of crimes under stressful situations are much less less autonomic arousal, right? So not having that same kind of feelings of fear or fight or flight are going away. So being able to staying calm under stressful situations, more likely to be convicted with crimes later in life. Other biological, right? So we're looking at, oh, there we go. Move this over here. Oh my gosh. Okay. Other things looking at brain. So looking at brains of people that were diagnosed with antisocial personality disorder, we see much less frontal lobe activity. So again, here we have PET scans, right? So remember that our frontal lobe is in charge of planning, executive function, controlling our impulses. So in fact, not only less frontal lobe activity, but after autopsies performed, have actually 11% less mass in their frontal lobe, right? So just less mass or part of that frontal lobe. Studies have also shown with PET scans that people diagnosed with this personality disorder are less responsive to facial expressions. So being empathetic, watching other people be afraid or be scared or be sad, just we see less of those mirror neurons that fire. Okay. The other part of understanding that is psychological and environmental. So looking at the statistics of people that have endured abuse, poverty, family instability, or higher rates of antisocial. So I'll make this one bigger as well. All right. So here is your looking at percentage of criminal offenders, looking at two different factors and then one combined, right? So this is looking at childhood poverty right here in the purple, obstetrical. I've never seen it written like that. Not like that. You're looking at problems during birth, right? So during childhood, if there was low birth rate or low oxygen or something like that, and this is when both complications are present. Right? You guys can make fun of me for the way I just said that word. I've never seen it put that way. Birth complications. And so here is the green line is showing with both, right? So then we have those factors together, right? We're almost doubling the percentage of criminal offenders if we have both the biological and the environmental causes present. Okay? All right. Excuse me. That is the end of our lecture, end of our unit. We will talk more about the treatments or lack thereof for these personality disorders in class on Monday or Tuesday. Have a wonderful weekend. Bye.